All right. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the first episode of Double-PEEK, made possible by the Peak League, Peak by UMB, the newest and the only Swiss community Counter-Strike league in 2024. My name is Raiden, and I'm joined today by Icy, or also known as Jan, who's the admin and the organizer of the league. So, really, the point of the show in the coming weeks is to showcase the players and teams playing in this peak league. So, I'm going to be hosting a variety of shows and interviews, discussions, just getting into what kind of players there are behind the gamer tag, figuring out how they got into CS, how they got into Swiss Esports, and other such interesting topics. It'll be a trip down memory lane, and I'm really excited to get started. So for today, we have lined up, as I said, the admin and the organizer of the league, Icy, who has been involved in the scene for quite some time. He's the admin of PolyLAN Zürich, which is quite, a pretty major LAN in Switzerland. And before that, he's also been to many events and he's been very active playing Counter Strike events online and on LAN. So he definitely knows. He's been around the block a few times, I think I can say. And now, of course, he's organizing the Peak League. So I'm going to throw it over to you, Jan. Welcome to the show. How are you doing today?
Hi, I'm doing very well. What about you?
Yeah, not too bad. Excited to get started on this. Let's see how it goes. So before we really get down to brass tacks, as they would say, let's start off with the nice icebreaker. As I just said, you've been to many lands across Switzerland. So let me ask you: if you had to go to one land per year and you could not go to any other land for the rest of your life, which Swiss land would you choose?
So I think, of course, I'm biased. I used to host my own LAN. Now somebody else is actually head admin of the event of PolyLAN Zürich. So of course, I would say my own LAN, kinda, but that's too biased.
That's a bit
So I'm gonna
biased, yes.
try. Yeah, I'm gonna try to think of another one. Um, I would say in recent history it would have to be probably event in Arbon. Unfortunately, this year there's no event as far as I know, which is really sad. I think it's like I liked it the most. Like there was enough CS competition for me to have fun to play. It's a really nice location. I actually like that it's like at the start of summer. It's like nice out. You can chill out outside with other people, and yeah. So I think it would have to be like event for me. Also, really nice food. Cannot forget that.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, so probably event.
Yeah, I think that's a great pick. We were at the event together last year, so I think I can have to agree on all of those points. I think it's special that it's in the summer. I think all of the other lands are mostly, at the beginning of winter or in the dead of winter, so that's already quite special. All right, so let's get into it a little bit. Let's just do a small intro on how Swiss Esports or Counter Strike Esports used to be a few years back, and then we'll very rapidly get into what you are doing and really the reasons for why you started. So let me just go back to around 2017, 2018, where there was this league called CEL, which was Swiss Esports League, and there really were a lot of Counter Strike teams that were playing then. I think I would say there were at least 40 teams or so playing in the league, and but as the years have gone by, we'll get into the reasons. I'm sure you can just touch on them briefly. The number of teams has declined. There's no denying that. Of course, the factors, there are many factors. The end of CS:GO, the inception of start of Counter Strike 2. So you know there were many factors that played into it. But the fact of the matter is, towards the end of 2022, there was no sell anymore, and all of last year we actually didn't really have anything to play. So, or as far as like officials or community leagues are concerned. So let's just go back to around 2023 and just talk to me about how the scene has evolved to this day.
Yeah, so I think we have to intro because there are some, let's say, even uh, older guys in terms of being in Swiss esports. So there has been a previous like era where CS was even bigger in Switzerland. But yeah, just to have a look at the most recent like era, I think it's like the second one. It's like the CS:GO era that climbed to its height with having Cell, SHL, and ESL all running in parallel. Then on top of that, we had cups. We had lots of LAN parties that were, I would say, like really successful. There were lots of teams going there. Um, so there was just a lot going on. There was also a lot of money involved. I think probably the peak in terms of what was happening in Swiss CS, like just big prize pools, lots of money spent on running the leagues. Uh, I don't know the budgets, but they were they were
Yeah.
huge.
Yeah,
Um,
you can kind of guess at it just because of the
yeah.
production, and there were many pieces that were involved in these leagues. Yes.
Yeah. And then, as you already mentioned, on one hand, generally popularity of CS:GO went down a little bit. We saw that other leagues were also losing players. 99 Damage, for example, it's not a Swiss league; it's like a Dach league, which also lost lots of teams. And the same happened in parallel here in Switzerland with Cell, but also with the other two leagues that focused even more on just the top eight. So they only had 8 slots. But it got harder and harder to. So at first, Cell stopped because there was not enough interest, and they had a kind of unfortunate format change. So lots of people weren't able to play the league anymore. And on top of that, we saw that even the top 8 leagues, in my eyes, really struggled to fill their slots. So we often saw teams filling slots that I would say didn't really fit into the leagues, so they really struggled to compete with the teams that were in these top 8 leagues. And yeah, so this all probably came to like a high when SHL also stopped uh, or announced that they will no longer host the league. So that's how we ended up in the position where we are right now, where there's basically, or there was no league anymore. There was no like regular way to play CS in Switzerland, and yeah, that's basically how we ended up here.
Yeah, I think it's a good intro. So let's just focus on this top eight aspect, and also about yourself as a player. So you've obviously played in these leagues for many years. So you would be on the more casual side of things. Is that correct?
Yeah, I mean there were multiple reasons for that. I never aspired to be a top player. I don't have the talent on one on one side. On the other side, there's just lots of things that compete in my life with CS. Um, yeah, I studied and yeah, other
Yeah, sure,
hobbies,
of
just
course.
lots of things. So I never climbed to the heights. I never DM'd. You can see it if you watch me play. So yeah, I think I was really a casual player and still am a casual player throughout the entirety of my career or like my life playing CS. And I always focused on CS just being fun, playing CS with friends, and yeah, so that's my perspective. And I think in reality that's or like lots of people have a similar perspective in Switzerland especially, um, and that's also how we get lots of good competition that or people that want similar things to us, um, at LAN parties and in leagues like Cell. I think in Cell we played against a lot of opponents that didn't prac 5 times a week, that just played it for fun, and had like a similar mindset to us, which makes it lots of fun to play.
Sure. So I think, I mean, if I'm hearing correctly, so there was a little bit of a divide between the casual, this open division sort of teams and players, and then this focus on the top eight. So like really the top of Swiss CS. And unfortunately, it feels like with the shutdown of Cell, even though these top eight leagues still existed, the gap just sort of widened, and there really was, at least as far as last year is concerned, there was just nothing for these casual sort of middle of the pack teams that were not quite at that level, but also not very very new to the game. They just had nothing to play. So I guess let's that's a nice transition into the core, the reasons, the fundamentals for why you started this peak league. So just talk to me about really the focus, like the core concepts of why you started this league this year at this time.
So I think one of the main reasons we already mentioned, um, it's simply because there's lots of space. There's nothing else going on. Um, and that's basically one of the main reasons, honestly. I always said that one of the biggest problems I had with SHL, with Swisscom Hero League, it's just that it sets unrealistic expectations in like Swiss players. If you talk to them, they often want all the goodies that come with a cell, with an SHL. Sorry, so they want all the high level production. They want this and that, but they still want to play it casually and treat CS as like a hobby side project. I don't know. Um, it's really frustrating because they want both worlds in a way. They got like in my eyes from the league side, they got the very professional side basically provided for free,
Hmm.
um, and never returned the favor. That's at least what I felt like. Discussions about media days that nobody attended. They started to give players money just to show up at media days, and still lots didn't. So I think it was like a really unhealthy relationship between league and players, and just kept going on no matter what happened. Like we had multiple scandals in the league, lots of cheating of different kinds. We had lots of death losses because players couldn't make times. That was also unfortunate because so expectation from the league is we want to do this really professionally, so we stream it, so we have fixed times
Hmm.
that aren't really flexible, but players are still have like other things to do. They cannot just make all the times work for them. So there was like a mismatch in my eyes.
Yeah.
But even if you talk to players, they didn't get that. They still were like, oh, but we want the big prize pool. We want all the goodies. Even though, yeah,
Yeah.
they
All the
should have
all the
never gotten them.
upsides. Yes. All the
Yeah,
upsides,
exactly.
but no downsides, basically. Yeah.
So I think that's why now that we have like a clean slate, we can compete in a way, because otherwise, yeah, uh, some teams would say, yeah, why would I play in this league if there's like this big thing
Hmm. Yeah. Of course.
that has like just other means, basically, right? Um, so that's one main reason, and the other reason is also I think it's the perfect time to experiment. So lots of things that we do, we'll talk about them. I think
Yeah. Definitely.
are really experimental, have never been done like in this way before. And I think the place where we are at in Switzerland is like the perfect place to have some experiments, to try out stuff, and also not just be out competed instantly. So if we
Hmm.
do experiments even before the sign up in the rule book, if we do enough experiments, some people will just be like, oh, why would I do this if I can do that,
Yeah.
and just not join the league. So I think it's just really good timing, and yeah, it was lots of the things we are implementing now basically came into existence over years. So I think I talked to people from different leagues about lots of things that we are trying. I talked to people playing, or like players from the leagues. And there was always I was less interested in climbing to the top in terms of being a good player, and more interested in like the how could basically the league, or like the experience of being in the league, be, let's let's say, changed, maybe not improved, because it's experiment, maybe
Yeah. Of
everything goes
course. Who
wrong, you
knows?
know. But yeah, what could be changed for the better, for the worse, I don't know yet. So yeah,
Yeah.
that's basically how it got started.
So, I mean, with what you said there, so let's just focus on this, on the sort of what teams you're focusing on, what teams you want to join the league. If I hear, so just to contextualize it a little bit, in the previous community league that we talked about in Cell, there used to be multiple divisions, and at some point there were only two divisions, just because of the just less number of, or smaller number of teams. But now, if I've seen everything correctly, there are no divisions in your league as of right now. Everybody joins the same tournament, and it's just talk to me about that factor, that there's no divide anymore between teams.
Yeah. So I think that from the get go, we have to talk about like the restrictions that you have around the tournament. Um, Cell at its peak with like 40, 50 teams really required more than one division in some way, or it would have had to run for a really long time for Swiss to work. So like it's more technical reasons. But for the size we are looking for, like what we expect in the league, and also that's one of the things I talked to Cell, for example, when their numbers really drop down to like 10 teams. Um, I think there's no need to have like two divisions if there's like, let's say, less than 20 teams. Like as like a
Yeah.
as shooting from the hip, as like, I don't know, it's really hard to talk about these things because in designing the current league, we didn't know how many people will sign up. It was really hard to like work with expectations basically. So how many people will be there to play, and how many rounds of Swiss do we need? How many rounds of playoffs do we want and need? Um, but I always thought that just the basic idea of splitting the league into like amateur and pro is really hard. It's hard for different, like multiple different reasons. The easiest reason in Switzerland is there's just a large blob of teams that I would say have good matches. So they have like uh, close to, let's say it's like a 60-40 maybe. If they play against each other, who wins? So it's like a good match. Like the odds are there that both teams can realistically win. And we have lots of these teams of like a high quality. So they stay in like similar rosters. They show up to all events. It's really easy to name some of them. I can go for like, let's say, Addicted, then Ume for sure. Lostic was one of these teams. Most of the time, Ruben, Big Daddy Gaming has a team that competes. They're like on a similar level and have really good matches against each other. But then there's some teams that are like clearly above them, and some teams that are clearly below them. Teams that are above them most of the time, like the Mind Sanity teams, they changed in the last few years, but most of the time their lineups are like a bit better. Like you'd expect them to win a bit more. So it's really hard to do a cutoff. So either you can try to say, okay, they are clearly like your pro teams, um, but then we saw that especially in SHL, for example, we had lots of teams that showed up that were better than, for example, these teams that I named. So the middle of the pack teams. And as soon as you're trying to implement like a hard limit, these teams have to decide where do we stand, and this can be really challenging. So if we assume that there are like two or three really good teams, we often had that happen in the recent years. Two or three like favorites, really good teams that you expect to win the league. If you're like clearly like below them on average, upsets always happen, right? But if you're clearly below them, what are you going for? Like, do you want to be in the upper part basically and have matches that you just cannot win on average in recent history?
Yeah, it's
Or are you
always tough to
going,
say they cannot
yeah,
win at all, but yeah.
exactly. And the cutoff is really arbitrary. So that's what I was always struggling with. I also disagree with the idea of having uh, of deciding, like basically just deciding it based on monies, to be
Mhm.
like, yeah, amateur, the amateur part doesn't get money, the pro part gets like prize money, and that's like the deciding factor. um I always struggled with all these things, and I think that up to a certain size, um we see that it really works well on average on LAN parties.
Mhm.
So on, it's like for years now, the default in LAN parties is to have like one big bracket of just Swiss. So one big group of Swiss, that works even at Switzerland, works most of the time pretty good. Of course, there's exceptions. Buchholz can fuck you over. Like
Some matchups,
we
of
all
course, you can
know
be
it.
unlucky, yes,
Yeah, exactly.
but
Somebody can lose a match, like one of the favorites can lose a match, and it mixes up all the teams. All of these things happen. That's like
I mean
how
that's
it goes.
competition. That's just
Yeah,
competition.
exactly. And to me, it always made sense that in the Swiss scene we have lots of teams that just show up to the league, you have no previous history. It's really hard to seed them or to like uh, guess how well they're gonna do. And like it's a similar or it's the same thing at LAN parties. At LAN parties, teams show up and without having like lots of previous history, they don't have like a fixed ranking. You just start the Swiss. Of course, you seed them, but they don't get into like a pro bracket
Hmm.
just because of their history. And I think the same challenge can be solved by just having a open Swiss system for a league. Teams just show up, they start to play. Their ranking should rapidly adjust to their skill level. So the first 2 or 3 weeks might be like easy or hard matches, depending if you're like the upper or lower half of teams. But then it should adjust and you should have good matches. And also think we make it really easy for us to not mess with slots. Slots have been problematic for years,
Yes, not
and
just in the Swiss scene, right? So if anybody is familiar with the pro scene, also there's a lot of controversy about slots and who, if the org deserves it, or if the players, how many players. So
mm,
that's a whole can of worms, definitely. Yeah.
yeah. So we also nicely just avoid that by not having any slots. We can after the season we have a winning team. Next season we can start from scratch. Of course, you have to play, let's say, 3 weeks of CS that aren't that great. Uh, 3 matches I'd say like 3 matches you need at least to be like in the right area of
Yeah.
teams. So in the Swiss system, but generally we avoid lots of other problems by doing that. So I think that's like the reason behind why we don't have a split into like two parts. Uh, the other obvious reason is, as I started from the beginning, we didn't know how many teams sign up.
Hmm.
If we said we want to do a split and then we end up with 8 teams and split them in two, that just makes no sense. Of course, we could have had like optional rules that only apply after a certain number of teams and things like that. We wanted to keep it easy, and up to now, it looks like it should work out. We'll see.
Yeah.
It's an experiment.
Of course. Yeah. I think so. Let's talk a little bit about this sort of gaming as a hobby and this schedule clashes that we already talked about. So talk to me about how the match day is going to work, how a match week is going to work. If this is easy, like as easy to reschedule as possible, or is it there are set days? Just tell me about the thoughts behind that.
Yeah, so I think once again, opportunity here was really good. There's not a lot of thing. There's not lots of other leaks going on. We had some conflicts with Digitech and also Fragster, but we settled for a default play date on Sunday at 8. Sunday at 8. That was the same in Cell. And it's just a time slot that works for lots of people as a default, of course. And we already know there's a conflict with Fragster. We couldn't work around that. I'm also really sorry for the two teams who are actually affected by that conflict. But yeah, generally you can always reschedule your match, so you can just agree with your enemies on new match date, and then we will move your match basically to ahead of the default play date, because default play date is basically like the last possible
Hmm.
play date in the week. So we can basically just uh, move it forward. There's one caveat we had in our experience with 99 and other leagues. It was really annoying when you did a proposal. Uh, your opponents didn't accept the proposal until basically the last second. So you didn't know, is the match going to happen at, let's say, Friday at 6? So you just had to be there and be ready. And then if they accepted, you played it. If not, yeah, you were just
Yeah.
sitting around and were like frustrated by it. So we added the rule that you have to agree 24 hours in advance on a match date, and we will then move the match for you guys. So we can basically reschedule and also have a bit of time ahead of the match to know that it's actually
It's
gonna
actually going
happen.
to happen. Yes.
Yeah, that's just again a thing that we are trying out. Um, and yeah, we always felt like rescheduling was really important, or let's even call it easy rescheduling. In SHL, rescheduling was possible, but it was basically impossible. You had to switch.
Yeah,
Yeah, you had to like switch around matches and stuff.
of
That
course.
way too
I
complicated.
mean, here
Never
there are
worked
only
out.
the players involved and not
Exactly.
many more pieces as far as production
Exactly.
is concerned and stuff.
And
Yeah.
and I think on top of that, which is not rescheduling technically, but also makes it easier to just play the games, is that you can technically have a lineup of 7 players,
Hmm.
and then on each match you just decide who's playing. Of course, you have to fulfill like the requirements. We'll talk about them later,
Yeah, definitely.
uh, but it should be really easy for you to play the matches. We feel like the goal of the league should be to play CS in the end and not to get default wins. So yeah, that's basically why we tried to make it really easy to get like a roster together and play, because yeah, from our experience we know it can sometimes be hard to have like just 5 people always be ready to play, um, if you're not full time in it.
Yeah, that sounds great. So let me just talk about this. Just really the focus that the focus is really on the sort of the middle of the pack players, or the focus is that any team at any level can have good matches, and the focus of the league is not towards the best teams or towards it's not on on a certain subset of players, but really that it's possible for everybody to have a good match. And I think, yeah, like this big Swiss group is probably the best way to go about that. And I just want to say that we have been to many lands together, and that really is the case at these lands. And also another point is that the lands have similar number of teams as what we are talking about here. Like at the biggest lands, you'll have around 15, maybe 20 teams on a good tournament. And at this point, we're also talking about around that number, correct?
Yeah, I think I know that there's going to be some more teams. Uh, at least they told me so. They didn't sign up yet. We'll see. Um, and also there is some play like there is some room where it still works. I think if we are going over 24 teams, technically it's going to be like a little bit, yeah, it's going to be a little bit tight with just
Hmm.
having 4 teams going into playoffs. Uh, but yeah, the reason to us that why we just wanted to have 4 teams in the playoffs is to make it easy, to make the playoffs like pretty straightforward, just a semi-final, final. The goal of these of this week, of it's just the last week being playoffs, is really to have like an celebration to the league, like an end celebration to the league. Everyone played CS, everyone had fun, and then at the end we have like a big final that we can all watch together. We maybe played ourselves against the team that or the teams that are playing in this final, so you are
Yeah.
a bit more involved in what's happening. And also I think it should be, uh, at least to me it should be like a shorter thing. Like, of course you can have 8 teams in the playoffs, but to us the goal was to find the best team in Switzerland that is participating in the tournament, of course. And to do that, in my eyes, most of the times you don't need top 8 playoffs. The best team should be in the top 4. If they don't end up there, we have another problem. Of course, Swiss, everything is possible if it goes wrong hard
Yeah.
enough.
Yeah.
But that's also an experiment. I think we'll have lots of learnings from this first season, and the idea is really to have this good final, basically. We are also trying to enforce that by allowing the best placing team from Swiss to pick the opponent for the semifinal.
Mhm.
So the idea is the finalist, or like
The
the
number one.
best
Yeah.
team, yeah, the number one team is probably going to pick the worst team, hopefully, maybe, if they're not gamblers, and will face against them in the semifinals. So we should get the best team and maybe the second best team in the
Mhm.
final, so have a good final. um, that's basically the goal, I think. And for the top teams, this is still attractive. So top teams, let's say top 2 teams, still to get to play this final. They still get to win a prize pool. Um, and I think for all the teams that are in the lower, uh, or let's say like not in the top 2,
Yeah.
like basically all other teams. For them, the focus is really on this nice long league format where you get to play a little bit of CS every week. That gets better and better towards the end. That's also a thing that I really liked about Cell. It was like ramping up in a way. At
Yeah,
the
true.
beginning, it was like, okay, at least where we played, because we played open diff. um, so yeah, I think that's basically how we focus on the longer Swiss phase, where the good, in my eyes, for most people, the good CS is gonna happen.
Yeah. Yeah, let me just touch on a couple of points. So, as you already talked about, the sign up is still open. So, if anybody's listening here and still on the fence, grab a few of your Counter Strike mates. As we have discussed multiple times, the point is really, regardless of your level, there are going to be teams that you can fight against. Uh, you're not going to get perfect matches every round, but you will have good matches at multiple stages. So definitely, the sign up is still open for I think a week now still. So
Yeah, so I think
probably
technically when we
Sundays.
release this video, you will already have to have signed up, because it ends on Sunday at noon, as far as I
Okay.
remember.
Yeah.
Then you have like 12 hours to send in all the data of your players, so we can verify that they are Swiss, basically.
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, less than a week, basically.
Yeah, but still plenty enough time to get your mates together. All right, so I think we've hit most of the points, but you just talked about one thing that we have not talked about yet, which is this Swiss core, majority Swiss players. Historically, it's always been that you just need three players out of five players to be Swiss, but in your league or in this version of the rulebook, this is not the case. So just talk to me about the inception of this subset of rules and how it came to be.
Yeah, I think it's fair to say that the Swiss scene grew more and more accustomed to having more and more imports, especially towards the end of the bigger leagues as well. It just got really, yeah, it just got really accepted to have imports. I think it was, especially if you're like in the top four, it was really normal to have at least one import, most of the time two imports. And I think it's really important that we distinguish the imports that were being used. To me, sometimes I yeah, I talk about them being like worst case imports. Worst case imports is really when somebody basically sorts face it by elo, and then for just one tournament picks up players that have no connection to anyone in any way in Switzerland, and just tries to import as much skill as possible to basically win, right? Um, and I think that in a way that's the worst case that you could get, um, or like let's say the worst case that is like obvious. Of course, cheat like importing somebody that cheats would be worse. Um,
Yeah,
but
we
to
can
me it
agree
was,
on that, I think.
yeah. To me it was always also a game of how much risk are you willing to take, because people who are not connected in the scene, who nobody knows, the odds just go up that something fishy is going on. Their IPs are often from anywhere in the world, so technically it's really hard to prove that they're not account sharing with anybody else. Like there's just lots of factors,
Yeah.
and I think it all came to me at least. It all changed during the Rigi Cup beginning of this year. We discussed like similar rulings before, but then the Krigi Cup happened, and in the Krigi Cup, you were basically seeing the teams that you always see playing in Switzerland. But then on top of that, you saw that the top, let's maybe say top four or six, like something like that. In the top four or six, there were lots of teams picking up imports. And it really felt weird because the scene is getting so small that uh, the impact is really big of just having like some teams picking up these players. You also felt that some of the legacy teams really are getting the short end of the stick. I think people who really play for years in lineups that are trying to like play with friends as well. just never get to climb because above them the player pool is getting filled up with just really good players from anywhere. And yeah, I think we also just saw some of the let's call them worst case imports. Uh, yeah, people always use things that I think are really not points that make any sense to me. Like, oh, they didn't even top frag. It's not a problem.
Yeah.
Then they tell you, yeah, but it's really important that we have these good players because we can learn from them. So yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, I
It's
mean, we
just
can. That's a whole
yeah.
can of worms that we don't
It's yeah.
necessarily have
It's
to
a
get into. But just talk
yeah.
to me about the solution that you have drawn up,
Yeah, yeah.
because, yeah,
I think we can sum it up by saying it's really frustrating because, especially if you look at all the teams that signed up to now, really nearly all of them are fully Swiss. Some of them have like one import. Often this import is even somebody who is already like really established in the scene, so it's not like a bad import if you want to call them that. Um, so I think it's really frustrating topic because it doesn't really affect lots of people. It's basically just in the top teams. So yeah, I shouldn't spend too much time on it. But
yeah,
now for the ruling that we went for, it's just basically we were sure that we are going to do at least 3 Swiss. That's the ruling that everyone used before. So 3 out of 5 players on the server have to live in Switzerland or be Swiss. And then we wanted to run another experiment. As I said in the beginning, lots of experiments going on. And this experiment was basically that one of the imports that you're allowed to have in your team has to have been to a Swiss LAN. And the idea behind that was that uh, large portions of the Swiss scene uh, are really going to lots of LAN parties. I think LAN parties in Switzerland are luckily really established, so lots of people go to LAN parties. And also, this is a metric to allow some of your uh, let's call them like closer imports or like established imports to still fill like a Swiss slot basically. So if you have people who play with you for years, we have lots of people from Germany, for example,
yeah.
who have been active in the scene for years and who show up to LAN parties, to online events regularly. We really wanted to also uh, give them some value in a way in the scene, and yeah, that's basically how we got to these values.
Yeah, so just to round it off, so basically you have 3 players that are Swiss or live in Switzerland, and then you have one person that you can just show that has been to. I mean, the major land parties are very easy to sort of find out because you can just sort of search their name, or even other land parties, and then you have one just free import that you can,
Yeah,
you can fill any way
and
that you want.
as I mentioned already, if you look at like the registered teams,
Hmm.
to most of them, none of this like more
Yeah,
complicated rule will apply because most of them are just 5 Swiss, so it's going to be really easy. Um, so yeah, I think in a way we need a rule that is like flexible enough for teams to play with having imports and stuff, but on the other hand we have to stay close to what's actually happening in the league, and in the league most of the teams are 5 Swiss players, so yeah,
yeah, that's
we,
a
we
good
just
sign.
have to balance out that like
Yeah.
basically.
All right, I think we've hit on most of the points.
Yeah,
Just to round this talk off nicely, if you want to continue this discussion in any way, as I've already talked about, Jan is the CS admin for PolyLAN Zürich. I mean, it's a great land. I've been there. I mean, many times at this point. It's smack in the middle of Zurich, right next to the ETH University, so great location. So if you want to catch a beer with us or catch a game of Counter Strike with us, check out PolyLAN. And I mean, as he's the admin, I'm sure he'll also have many nice words to say about his land. So I'll let him take this away.
yeah, I think to me Polylan over the years, at first I got a bit frustrated because it was really hard to attract CS players to it. At this point, I don't really like. I'm still trying. I'm talking to people and stuff, uh, but yeah, in the end, it turns out to be an event where uh, lots of people show up that we really can like spend a nice time together. I think also networked at PolyLAN way more than all the other lands combined. Maybe Event is like the only other land
Yeah,
where I
probably.
networked in a similar fashion. And I think PolyLAN is just we get yeah, that's also why we started the land, by the way. Like, there's so much opportunity with PolyLAN that we just had to do it. We have 40 gigs of uplink internet because it's in ETH. We have the Easter weekend, so it's like basically free a free extra day. So
Hmm.
um, you show up and you just have like half a day or an entire day extra to spend, which is really nice because in the end we can still run like a full CS tournament, but you have time to chill out, you have time to play face it, you have time to do whatever you want
Yeah.
on the side, which I think is really it's just really
It's
nice. So
it's an underrated aspect of lands also. Yeah. So
yeah, and I think it's like really to have like a fun time. I think it's same with the event. It's like just one of my favorite events. And yeah, lots of people are gonna show up that are just fun people. So
yeah, just to sort of add to this networking point, Jan and I actually got to know each other through Polyland when we were both studying at ETH. Also, a few of my friends joined this Counter Strike group that we have now. Shebix is one more person that we found. He's another gem, another Polyland alumni, I would say. uh, well, one of the alumni. We also got to know Mathieu Anton quite well over the years. He's been, I think he'll be there this year also. So it's over Easter weekend. Check it out. All the descriptions for the sign up for the tournament, also for the land, will be, or all the links will be in the description. Excuse me. And I think we are at the end. So as a final word, who do you want to thank? Is there anybody you want to shout out or anything like that?
oh, that's gonna be a long part though. No, I'm trying to keep it short. Okay, so I think we can do it in like groups. First of all, surely UMB for believing in us. Fun fact: basically, the UMB connection also happened through Shepix and
Yeah.
yeah. So I think it's funny how it all comes together. So first, thank you to UMB for believing in us and supporting the project. And then I think just all the people spending time for the league. I think it's really underappreciated how much time people spend for it. So surely the co-admin Alastor has to have like an honorable mention at the top. Then the content team. So we have Andy and Rigi. And also you, of course, because you're also spending time talking to people and stuff, which is really nice. I think it really adds to the league in a way that other leagues didn't have, like shoulder content that is really fun. And then lastly, I think all the people that I annoyed when when starting up the league, so people who read through the rule book and stuff. So that's of course you again, Shepix, Mathieu, Elodir, Keve Hilfiger. Like I talked to so many people about the rule book and how we should run things. I think their feedback was really valuable, and yeah, prevented maybe some hiccups, prevented some chaos. Uh, there might still be
I
chaos.
mean, there'll always be,
it's
it's
it's still
part of
like
it.
it's still an experiment. It might go horribly wrong, but yeah, I feel like it's worth a try. And yeah, we'll see.
All right, it's a great way to end this talk. I want to thank everybody for listening, for hanging out with us for close to 45 minutes now. So thank you so much for watching. I will be seeing you guys in the next coming weeks with some interesting players, interesting interviews. But till then, it's goodbye from me.
And from me, bye.
Bye bye.